In the next few minutes, you're going to see why claiming Social Security early isn't automatically a mistake. It can actually be the smartest move for the right retiree. Because the real risk usually isn't a smaller check on paper, it's how your claiming choice affects your cash flow, your health, your spouse, and the rest of your portfolio. Now, for context, I'm a certified financial planner, and I've helped hundreds of retirees make this exact decision inside of real retirement plans. And so today I'm going to walk you through the 5 types of retirees who often should claim early. And I want to see if you recognize yourself in one of those types so that you don't end up making a decision you're going to regret later on. Now, the first type is the health clock retiree. The classic advice to delay assumes one big thing, that you're going to be around long enough to enjoy those larger checks for many years to come. But if health is uncertain, the biggest risk isn't I might miss out on bigger payment later. The biggest risk is designing your plan around a future you might not get to enjoy. I once worked with a lady who was very disciplined, almost to a fault. She had the personality type that she wanted to do everything perfectly right. She said, I'm delaying because it's mathematically optimal in my plan. And honestly, on paper, it did look fine and it probably was mathematically correct. But while we were building her plan, something kept showing up. She felt like she needed to postpone everything that was fun in her life. Trips, family visits, a new car, even basic home upgrades. She wanted the bigger check from Social Security, so that's why she was delaying and waiting longer, so she tightened up her lifestyle now. Unfortunately, she was later diagnosed with cancer and wasn't able to enjoy the retirement that she always dreamed of. So if your health outlook is uncertain, whether it's your own condition, your family history, or you're simply just not confident that you'll be around till age 92, then claiming earlier can actually be a very rational strategy. And one more thing, if you're married, this decision affects your spouse too. So we never want to make this decision in isolation. And we are going to talk more about that in our 5th type. Now, the second type is the retiring into a bad market retiree. Retiring into a down market is one of the most dangerous scenarios in retirement because it's not just the fact that the market's down, it's that you're also withdrawing money while it's down. We call this time the retirement risk zone, which is the 10 years before retirement and the 10 years after you retire, when your portfolio is most vulnerable. So here's what this looks like in real life. A retiree tells me, I'm delaying Social Security because I want the bigger monthly paycheck. So to cover their expenses, they pull from their investments in the meantime. Then the market drops. Not forever, but just enough to sting. Now they're selling shares to pay their bills while prices are down. And they keep saying it will come back eventually. And sure, it probably will, but the shares that you sold through the downturn, those don't come back, right? And you had to sell more shares because the value per share was less. And this is really a problem that we see when families are trying to retire earlier because they are dependent on the portfolio and because they have a longer time horizon in retirement. So the issue they run into is when their plan is too rigid, it actually becomes very fragile because it requires that the market cooperates in those first few years of retirement. So in a situation like this, our program stopgap is to actually pull their Social Security filing earlier. It works like a shock absorber. Less pressure on the portfolio when it's most vulnerable. You see, sometimes the smartest move isn't chasing the highest long-term return, it's avoiding forced selling when the timing is off. So if markets are shaky and you're depending on your portfolio earlier on in retirement, pulling your Social Security filing date earlier, can stabilize your cash flow and protect your plan when it needs it the most. Now, our 3rd type is the lower earning spouse claims first couple. A lot of couples think that this is one decision, like it's either we both claim early or we both delay. But Social Security is really 2 decisions that interact with each other. And in a lot of real retirement plans, one of the smartest moves is this. The lower earning spouse claims earlier, and then the higher earner delays. Couples tell me all the time that they're both delaying filing for their checks because that's what they thought they were just supposed to do. And I get why. It makes sense on the surface because they want to get a larger benefit for both of them. But often when we look at their numbers, they're really just draining their portfolio faster than they realize, and they're unfortunately doing it unnecessarily. The reason being is that when one spouse is a lower earner and their benefit is going to be less than 50% of their spouse's benefit, once their spouse files, they'll actually receive the difference between the benefit they're receiving and 50% of their spouse. So by claiming at their full retirement age, for example, and then waiting for the higher earning spouse to file later on, they'll get the increased benefit, but they can also relieve pressure on their portfolio by having their income start earlier, which is going to protect their long-term higher benefit and allow them to exhale knowing that they're going to get back what they paid in decades into Social Security, and they're still supporting their long-term plan. For many couples, the best strategy isn't early versus late. It's who claims when And it is very dependent on your personal income and expense situation and the timing of your income and expenses. Because if the higher earner delays, that often becomes the stronger anchor benefit later on. And it can matter even more if one spouse outlives the other. Now, our fourth type is the life happens retiree. Not everyone retires on their ideal timeline. Sometimes you don't retire because you hit your savings number. Sometimes your job changes, or your health changes, or your family needs you. And suddenly, retirement starts whether you're ready or not. The biggest danger in that moment isn't just the cash flow. It's what stress is going to make you do next. We have a client that planned to work until 67. He was a great saver and on track to retire on his own terms. Then his workplace shifted, and the company he was at was sold to a new owner who brought in new leadership, which, as you can imagine, resulted in new expectations and unfortunately much less flexibility for him. So he tried to grind it out, but ultimately it wasn't for him, and he ended up retiring early. So at 63, he luckily did have enough savings to make his retirement work based on the lifestyle he wanted to lead, but it wasn't what he originally planned. And so he had a lot of anxiety around expenses and not running out of money. His biggest worry was becoming a burden to his family later on in life when he couldn't afford, or if he couldn't afford, proper care for himself, since he was single. So we encouraged him to actually file for Social Security earlier at 65. Even though it would slightly reduce his monthly benefit, waiting would have taken a tremendous toll on him, and it would have robbed him from enjoying some of the best years in retirement. So that's why I always say Social Security, it is about the numbers, but it's also about the person behind the numbers. So if life forces an early retirement on you, whether it's job loss, burnout, or caregiving, claiming Social Security early can be a bridge that keeps you from making permanent mistakes with your money under pressure. The key is to be intentional with your decisions, but flexible enough with your plans, because life isn't going to always go according to plan. Now, our fifth type is a survivor benefit strategy, retiree. Now, most people think Social Security is a one-way door. Like you pick a date, claim, and you're stuck with the benefit you've been provided. But if you're eligible for survivor benefits, as a widow, widower, and sometimes as a surviving divorced spouse, you may have a real planning advantage. Social Security lets you choose the benefit that works best now, and you may be able to switch later on. What that means is survivor benefits can start as early as age 60 and 50 if you're disabled. And if you're eligible for both survivor benefits and your own retirement benefit, you can typically take one at a time. And Social Security explicitly notes that you can switch later on. For example, start with the survivor benefits and then switch to your retirement benefit later on if it becomes larger. And importantly, filing for survivor benefits doesn't automatically trigger filing for your own retirement benefit. So if you are a survivor or in a survivor situation, the better question isn't just, should I take it earlier or later? It's which benefit should I take first if you're eligible, and what's my plan to switch later on if that makes sense within the construct of my plan. So those are the 5 types. And if you notice something, none of them mention the break-even math of filing earlier versus later. Real retirement planning is about managing risk, timing, and keeping your plan flexible when life isn't perfectly predictable. But how do you balance filing early versus later when everyone keeps bringing up the perfect break-even age and how it correlates to your filing date? Well, I unpack all that and how it can affect your filing decision in this next video.